Welcome to the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast with your host, Thom Singer. In each episode, we explore the interesting lives of business leaders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and others who have a healthy dose of the entrepreneurial spirit. It is time to explore something cool. Now, here is your host, Thom Singer.
Episode 490. Yes, welcome to Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. Can you believe it? We are only 10 shows away from episode number 500. The countdown has begun. Thank you so much for pulling your chair up to the Cool Kids table. If this is your first time tuning into the show, welcome. If you've listened to many of the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcasts, welcome back. I am so pleased that this show has made it for 5 years and now almost 500 episodes. It is really, really exciting. Hey, before I get started, I need to thank the sponsor or one of the sponsors of this episode. So today's show is brought to you by the Bias Disruption Podcast. So human behavior, it is a complicated thing, especially when it comes to working and living together. Now, understanding how and why people behave in certain ways in groups, that is what my friends Dr. Josh Packard and Megan Bissell, it's what they do for a living. Their podcast, The Bias Disruption, it answers questions like, what is the ideal team size? How do company cultures change? And where does innovation come from? Now, if you've ever wondered how to make changes in your company that lasts, and let's face it, if we're going to make changes, that's what we want. We want something that's sticky. You've got to listen to The Bias Disruption. Megan and Josh, they use social science, real-world experience, and humor to share very unique insights. Plus, they like to play nerdy games. So check out The Bias Disruption. So today's show is going to be kind of a short, 15-minute little podcast about something that I experienced. My Tuesday shows are usually just my observations about something that's going on in the world of entrepreneurship. And today's show is Wednesday because I'm a day late. And I know I got to get this show out because I got my countdown going to episode 500. I can't skip anything. So I got to thinking, what is burning a hole in my saddle? What do I have stuck in my craw? What am I thinking about? And I had an experience this morning that I've been thinking about all day. So I got a call a couple days ago to be a guest on a podcast called The Extra Mile. It's a podcast that's produced by the Charity Miles app that you can get on your phone. And it's a podcast hosted by the founder of Charity Miles, Gene Gurkoff. And he is a former corporate lawyer who lives in New York City, who started this charity, I think he said 3 years ago. And what he does that's different about his podcast, and I've been a guest on, 100 podcasts as a guest. I've obviously hosted this one for 500 episodes and coming up on 20 episodes of the other show I host, which is called the Digital Enterprise Society Podcast. Got to check out the Digital Enterprise Society Podcast. I co-host that show with a guy named Craig Brown. But so I've been on lots of podcasts, but this one, The Extra Mile, had something that was different, that totally fit into that world of try new things. And that is, Gene interviews his guests while taking them out for like a 3-mile run on the trails in whatever city they live in. So whether his guests are in New York City where he lives, or if he's visiting a city like Austin, he'll find somebody interesting to interview. And I don't know why he chose me, but this morning at 7 a.m., I met him downtown at his hotel. I did a little bit of stretching in the lobby before we started our run, and together we went out for a 3-mile run. Now, I'm going to tell you that during this run, he interviewed me, which meant we walked for part of that 3 miles because there was no way after about the first 3/4 of a mile, I was going to be able to talk and run. I had to be able to breathe because I wanted to be able to answer his questions. So I think that it's common. A lot of his runs probably turn out for walks, although he does interview a lot of like famous long distance runners on his show. And I think that those people can run and talk for the whole hour. But we walked a lot of the way. But it was really interesting. It was, first of all, he's a really, really nice guy. He is really passionate about his charity and his app called Charity Miles. You can, if you're a runner, or even if you're not, you're just learning to run, you can sign up on his app for Charity Miles, and you can donate their money to charities, or you can do a pledge so that you're donating money you raise from your friends that goes to a good cause. Go check out Charity Miles. The app is on the store on iTunes or wherever you get your apps, and I'm going to have him on the show. In a couple of weeks, we're going to set up an interview because he really is doing some cool things. He's exactly the type of person I want to interview here on the show. However, The reason I'm talking about it on this episode is, we went out for a run and we were talking about things about charity and about giving. And I told the story of how we started the Kate Singer Endowment for Craniofacial Surgery and Research. And I talked about how we just give small. We just give little teeny pieces, a couple percentage points when I give a speech towards this charity, and how over time it has grown to over $70,000 between the endowment at the Dell Children's Hospital in Austin, where we live, and the Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego, where my daughter Kate had her surgery 17 years ago. And I talked about how giving just a little bit, it adds up. And he had kind of the same philosophy. But then he said, Tom, I'm going to challenge you. And it was funny because I know he's a corporate lawyer, so he's got that lawyer piece in him that wants to push back. I used to be the marketing director for a law firm, so I know corporate lawyers. I know how they think. But he said, why does giving have to be small? And you'll have to listen to the episode to see where we went with it. We went a couple different directions with this. But he said that when he takes his guests out for a run and they say something, the lawyer in him gets him to want to challenge them to think differently. He wants to push people a little bit. And then he admitted that when he goes out for a run by himself, he actually pushes himself. He challenges himself to, how can I think bigger? Am I taking my charity to the next level? Am I really taking my cause everywhere that it can go? And we talked about this on the show. And after we stopped the recording, and we were just walking back towards downtown from the lake, we were talking more about this. And I was asking him sort of when he started the charity, how he grew it to the size that he did. And again, he brought up this thing that he spends a lot of time challenging himself and pushing himself to think bigger. When I got in my car and started to drive away, it was like he was like the little angel, or maybe the devil, on my shoulder saying, Tom, how are you challenging yourself? Are you thinking big enough? And I'd love to tell you that I had some sort of a huge revelation, but I didn't. And all day I've been thinking about Gene and his challenge of how do you think bigger? What can people do to push themselves even more? And I realized that if this gets stuck under my craw, and I'm thinking about this all day, I'm usually right when there are people out there who are listening to my podcast. There are people who are the listeners of this show. What is it that they're not challenging themselves on? So today's episode is, if you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a business leader, or you have a job, you're working for somebody else, but you just have a huge dose of that entrepreneurial spirit, I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to challenge yourself? How are you pushing yourself to go big? You know the old expression, go big or go home? Are you going big? Because I know you want to. I don't think you listen to a show called Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do and listen to these interviews if you don't want to do more. And I think that that's why we're here. I think that's why I do this show, and I think it's why you listen to this show. It's you want to be the person who does more. You want to push yourself. So I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to push yourself? Because here's the thing. I don't know that I could answer that question. I mean, we talked about it on the run, and I'm sure I can go back and listen when my podcast on his show airs in a couple of weeks. But I'm really not sure I know the answer. And yet I do know one thing for sure, and that is success leaves clues. I say it all the time. I say it here on this podcast. I say it when I speak to corporate audiences. Success leaves clues. So I'm going to ask you, what do you do to push yourself to be bigger, to be all that you can be? How are you not settling for the small, little morsels and waiting for them to add up? How are you making yourself go bigger? Because here's the thing. If you answer that question for me, if you go onto Twitter or onto Instagram and leave a comment for me at Thom Singer, ThomSinger, or you go onto LinkedIn and find me there and send me a direct message, I know that if you're doing something to push yourself, I'm going to see a clue for success in there. You're going to have an idea, a theory, a concept that I'm going to be like, oh, I could be doing that. I could morph that into my own way. And if you're listening to this thinking, uh-oh, now Tom is like the little devil on my shoulder. I don't know how I'm pushing myself. Maybe we can figure it out together. So reach out to me through email or through social media and let me know that you don't know the answer, but you want to find it. And maybe together we can see each other's blind spots. Because here's the thing. We get so caught up in our own world doing the things that we have to do that we forget that somebody else has a slightly different angle looking at our lives. They can totally see things we can't because we have our own blind spots. So sometimes conversing with someone from the outside, they're like, I have an idea for you. I mean, some of my best aha moments, some of the things that have been the biggest breakthroughs in my career have come because someone else has looked from the outside and said, Tom, you forgot to do this. Why don't you try it that way? And it's like, duh, never saw that before. So if you're one of these people who's just like me, kind of stuck in this idea of, yes, I want to go big, I want to challenge myself, but I can't see it. Call me. Maybe we'll jump on a call and we'll try and figure it out for each other. You never know in this world. I believe that all opportunities in life come from people. And so when we converse with others, that's why I believe in mentorship and I believe in peer mastermind groups, is that other people can often give us that little perspective that we can't see for ourselves. So if you have a great idea of how you're pushing yourself, share it with me. If you don't know where to begin, share that with me and maybe we can figure it out together. So I'm really grateful to Gene Gurkoff from Charity Miles for really inspiring me today to try and think bigger. I wish I'd had an aha moment. I wish I could tell you he changed my whole life as soon as I drove away. But he's got me thinking. And the fact that I've been thinking about this for 6 hours means that it's the exact thing I needed to bring to this show. For these shows that I do that are just me talking, I usually try to do something where it's me sharing something I'm struggling with or something that I've observed. Because what I've found is people who listen to the show tell me that was my favorite episode. I sometimes think, who wants to listen to me just talking for 15 minutes? This is going to be the lamest episode of all time. And of course, those are the shows where I get the most comments from people who listen to the show. So my guess is that somebody out there just resonated with this whole message. Somebody out there who's listening to this episode is like, yes, I have to challenge myself. I can't think small. I can't play little anymore. And maybe together we can figure out where to go from there. So that's all I've got for you today. Before I go, though, I've got to thank the other sponsor of this episode. So this episode, like all of them, is brought to you by Podfly Productions. Now, I never could have got this podcast going if I hadn't partnered with Podfly. They are one of the best vendors I have ever worked for. Podfly, they do all the heavy lifting if you want to start a podcast. They set you up with the right equipment and guidance to ensure that you're going to sound amazing. If you want to start a podcast, and I know that so many of you do, jump over to podfly.net/coolthings and check out the offer that they have for the listeners of this show. So how will you challenge yourself? What is it that you're going to do differently for the next 4 months as we come into the last quarter plus of 2019? What are you going to do to go big so that you don't have to go home? Share that with me. Find a way to reach out and tell me what you're doing to go bigger, because I want to be inspired. I want to hear what you're doing because, that's going to be the thing that gets me going. Now, I know from having done these challenges or pleas before, I get about 1,000 plus downloads per episode. I don't know how many people listen all the way to the end, but I know that hundreds of people will hear my voice make this challenge and say, reach out to me and tell me what you're doing that's spectacular. And I know that only 2, 3, or 4 people will. But that's okay, because the 2, 3, or 4 people who reach out and share with me, one of them, maybe all of them, are going to have that little bit of inspiration that I need. And then I can take it and share that out on a future podcast episode. Heck, maybe we'll do a whole interview about what you've done to challenge yourself. So reach out to me. You can get me at tom@thomsinger.com or any of the social medias. Hey, we're going to be back in a couple of days with an interview. In fact, the interview that's coming up next, it'll be out, episode 491, is another one of those episodes that is co-produced with the Austin Technology Council. I have been so fortunate to be able to partner with ATC. The Austin Technology Council is the largest, most premier tech organization in Central Texas, and they are there to help our tech community, to help the entrepreneurs in Austin and beyond really excel. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about a brand new training opportunity that they have for established entrepreneurs to really be able to scale and grow their companies. So you're going to want to listen to that, even if you don't live in the Austin area. Success Leaves Clues, what the Austin Technology Council is doing with this new series, is something you're going to want to hear about. So make sure you don't miss that episode. Plus, you can go back into the archives. There are 489 other episodes out there. There are all kinds of interviews with people who are really inspiring. So keep listening and be back in a couple of days. But in the meantime, go out there, do something new, try new things, challenge yourself. And while you're at it, have a great day.
Thank you for being part of the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast. Without your participation and listening to these conversations, there is no show. Connect with Tom at thomsinger.com and follow him on Twitter at Thom Singer.